Welcome back to Boots on the Ground, the podcast where we discuss Israel's war, politics, and identity. This week, I'm joined by Master Sergeant Haim Brenner. Welcome to the show, Haim.
Thanks for having me.
Haim and I are going to discuss what it is that makes a warrior and how it is that we can educate the future generations of warriors to make sure that we have a strong class of people ready and capable of defending Israel now and in the future. Before we get into today's episodes, I want to thank our partners here at the Jerusalem Media Group and our sponsors at BeThereIsrael.com. BeThereIsrael.com provides streaming video services for all of your events here in Israel, whether it's a bar mitzvah or a funeral, a wedding or a party. Doesn't matter what the event is, BeThereIsrael.com can help it make sure that all your guests who can't make it here can still join the party. And now let's get to the show. Chaim, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so before we even figure out what a warrior is, let's find out who Chaim is. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is and how you made it to Israel.
So, I grew up in a suburb of Boston, where the high school I went to, I was one of maybe a dozen Jewish students in a high school of 1,200 students. And I always kind of understood that that was different. That was something out of the ordinary. And I grew up in a generation of Jews in America where our grandparents were the generation of Holocaust survivors that always told us, yes, here we feel safe. Yes, they welcome us, but you can never trust anybody. They'll always be ready to turn on you at a moment's notice. Whereas my parents' generation grew up 100% secure in there being American first and foremost, and that was never going to be in any way undermined. The way I see it, my generation, I'm 31, kind of splits down the middle between the people that believed our grandparents, that there was always going to be a chance that they would turn on us, and our parents, who thought they would always have a place there. I think it's pretty clear I fall into the camp of listening to my grandparents, and that's a big part of how I ended up here. Now, growing up, I grew up in the conservative movement, and my family, I would always say, was more identified as Zionist than necessarily religious. At Friday night dinner, we didn't necessarily talk about Advel Torah, we talked about what was going on in Israeli politics. I knew how to explain the Knesset before I knew how to explain the Congress. And throughout both the Jewish youth group that I went through, USY, the Conservative Movement's youth movement, and through the summer camps that I went to, Zionism in Israel was a huge part. My favorite counselors were always Israeli. I always knew I wanted to come here. And by the time I was about 14 or 15, I had a pretty good idea that I wanted to be here for the rest of my life. As I got older, as I understood the geopolitical climate better, as I understood Israel's history better, I understood the need for warriors. And then, in my first trip to Israel, the man that led my group was also a new immigrant to Israel who served in Sayeret Tzanchanim, the unit that I went on to serve in, and I saw him as a huge model, huge who I should be looking up to, what I should be trying to be as a man, as an Israeli, as a Jew. And from here to there, that's kind of how I ended up in Sayeret Tzanchanim because I wanted to be like him. And honestly, he serves with us in reserves as well.
So, right. So, if, for anyone who hasn't caught on, Chaim serves with me in reserve duty in the same unit, and I've had the pleasure of knowing him since he was 19, 20?
About 20.
Since when you were about 20 and you first came to, and you
Jerusalem.
first joined the army and through the loans. No?
I met you 2 years into the army. When I left the kibbutz I lived on as part of Green Sabar and moved to Jerusalem, I must have been 20 or 21. I was about 2 years into the army, and I started coming to events for the Lone Soldier Center.
Exactly. So I've had the pleasure of knowing Chaim now for
About a decade.
Serving alongside him for about 4 or 5 years now. And I can tell you he's definitely lived up to the title of warrior. We'll get into a few stories about his escapades in Gaza a little later on. But before that, I want to say, what was the process of leaving Boston or the suburbs of Boston, coming to Israel? What program did you come on? What was that like? What was leaving home, leaving your comfort zone, coming to a foreign country? You don't really have family here. You didn't really have friends here. Basically, giving up that comfort and ease and coming to Israel. What was that like? Where'd you go? What'd you do? And what happened along that way that helped solidify your need to stay here and defend the country instead of, turn around and go back to America?
So first, a big part of being one of 12 Jews in a high school of 1,200 kids is even if you look like the rest of them, even if you feel like the rest of them, you can always tell there's a difference. And honestly, I didn't encounter all that much anti-Semitism. Yeah, maybe one kid threw a quarter on the ground or something. Yeah, he might have had to make a trip to the hospital afterwards. But I always knew that I was different. I always knew that something there didn't stand out, and I didn't really belong. As much as they could make it feel like I did, as much as I spoke the language, I was from the place, I looked the part, I had a comfortable life. It would have been very easy to then go on to college, then go on to law school, do what my dad did to try and get into medical school, maybe even go to the military in the States. I had a pretty good opportunity to go to the Coast Guard Academy because I was good in the maths and sciences when I was younger. But I always knew that it wasn't the place for me, and I wanted to know where the place for me was. Honestly, it's something I've talked about a lot with my Tsevet, with my team from the Army, is this feeling of belonging. And I never really had it there. And the second I came here for the first time when I was 17, I immediately knew it was that. So when I was 18, I finished high school. And I made Aliyah completely alone with no help, no programs. The Lone Soldier Center, I don't know if it was even started at that point, but really all of the opportunities, all of the information that's available now to anyone that can just open their laptop wasn't necessarily available. You really had to know where to look. So I didn't know about Green Sabar. I didn't know about Machal. I didn't know about all these different programs. So I just made Aliyah on my own. Got on a plane, started my first year at IDC Herzliya because the course was in English. I got accepted relatively easily, and it seemed like a soft landing. During that first year, I realized very quickly I had no intention of finishing the degree. I wanted to go into the Army when I was about the same age as everyone else. I knew I wanted to go to a special unit. I already knew what unit I wanted to go to. And it was also really important for me to go to a unit with a team, with an organic team, a group of guys that I was going to be with the whole way through. So during that first year at IDC, I did all the seminars and joined Garin Sabar. I moved with my Garin to Kibbutz Levi, next to Tzoma Golani up north. It's right next to Tiberias. And then from there, all of us drafted off to our different places along the way and would come back home on weekends to each other and to our adoptive families. One, the term adoptive family is really important here because different kibbutzim that host Garinim or lone soldiers use different terms. So they use host family or adoptive family, and there's a huge difference in the approach when they actually do that. Our adoptive families, almost without exception of the people in my Garin, are families by every meaning of the word. My adoptive parents stood with me under the chuppah when I got married right next to my dad. Wow. And inside of that, between the Garin, which was a chosen family, and this family that brought me in as one of their own with no questions, which on paper is an absurd idea. They brought in a random 18-year-old from the other side of the world and said, all right, you're ours now. It gave me this feeling of just belonging, that this is where I need to be. And I understood that that had implications for the entire country, the entire national identity, the entire national feeling, how people worked, how people interacted here.
So you went from being one of 12 Jews to now one of a couple of million. And you went from having a small family to having a bigger family than you could possibly imagine.
To having a Garin of 18 people that were like brothers and sisters, an adoptive family with 2 parents and 4 younger siblings who I then had to be a role model for, and a team. We started the Army 30 guys. Obviously, throughout the Masul, throughout our training course, different people went out to command, people got injured, people dropped from the pipeline. But ultimately, I went from having nothing to having 3 full and intense families. There's a quote from the Prince of Egypt, when all you've got is nothing, there's a lot to go around, to a T.
Exactly. So it's pretty awesome that you had. So what you're saying is your first step in becoming this was first being part of that bigger family. In order to become, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're trying to say is that as part of the process of becoming a warrior for Israel, you had to first become a part of Israel, right? Growing up, you were Jewish and you were Zionist, but your circle was really small and it had very little. And you grew up and you came here, and now all of a sudden it's much more real. There's what you're protecting isn't just an idea anymore. It's something very real. So then you join the Army. You're going through basic training. What's that process like? Basic training, again, there's about a decade between us, but certain things don't change. It's depressing. It's physically difficult.
I liked it. Like, listen.
You like pain. That's fine.
Yeah.
There are parts of it I enjoyed, but I wouldn't do it again.
I think one of the things that's probably across the board in infantry and special operations soldiers I've met from every military in the world I've ever spoken to, whether it's my American friends, whether it's people I met in South America, whether it's people I met traveling in the East, whether it's people I met from the UK, is that there's nothing you can do to someone who wants to be infantry to hurt them that they wouldn't do to themselves for fun. And that kind of, it translates, because at some point you can suffer and be miserable. You're like, all right, let's do it. And then it's just going to be fun. Exactly. I remember when my adoptive family first brought in my now adoptive brother, who was also a paratrooper, who was also a warrior by all standards, recently went out to officer's course and in reserves. When he was going out to his tryout for paratroopers and selection for the special units, he asked me for a word of advice. And I was like, listen, it's going to hurt and you're going to like it. And he just went, wow, that's metal. And I was like, that's the way to do it. There's no 2 ways around it. But I think your point about first becoming Israeli, that was a huge part of it. Because it's not just that I grew up with very few Jews. It's not just that I grew up in a small family. I'm an only child. That's a strange thing in Israel. Every person I say that to here is like, "Oh wow, what happened?" Like that, they take it as something wrong, something.
Assume there's a medical problem.
Exactly. So first, there was really becoming part of Israeli society. And again, like you said, growing up in the States, my safe place, my close group of friends were my Jewish friends from the youth organization, not the people that I went to school with necessarily. Of the people I went to high school with that I'm still in touch, there's maybe two or three. I think one came to my wedding, actually flew from the States here.
Oh, wow.
Of my Jewish friends growing up, we were still in pretty much constant contact. I spoke to one of them on the way here 5 minutes ago. It was this concept of a place that I belong and understanding that that place that I belong, that place that I love so much, wasn't inherently safe. For being a history nerd my entire childhood, I always assumed that, yes, all of these people I grew up with were nice to me. They invited me for dinners. We went to their Christmas parties. We knew their families. It was very normal interaction. But I always assumed that the day that a red flag with a swastika on it went up, they would march underneath it just like everybody else. And honestly, in the last 2 years, what I've learned is the only things I were wrong about were the color of the flag and what was actually on it. The second I understood that, I felt like I had to defend it. And I didn't feel like there was anything I could do in the States that would actually be able to attain that goal. Because in my eyes, the only safe place for the Jewish people has ever been the state of Israel.
Right, but so to get back to my question, though, I agree with you 100%.
Sorry,
We
yeah.
both, I felt the same way. Again, I got the color of the flag wrong and what it stood for. My question to you was, in basic training, the process of starting off with 30 strangers who are going to become your closest friends, the most intimate people you know inside and out, in their absolute best and their absolute worst and everything in between. What's that process like over those 3, 4, 5 months, from total strangers to you're closer than when then you're closer than siblings. You're being pushed to beyond anything you could have imagined as your physical limitations. Your emotional limitations are being pushed also to their absolute limit. You're learning skills that you've never even, maybe you imagined them, but you never thought you were going to have them. And you really have no use for them after the army either. I mean, as a light machine gunner, you can hit targets all over moving, but doesn't translate into the civilian market very well at all.
No.
But what was that process like for you? As much as you were now part of the Israeli family, you're part of the Jewish family through your process of being on the Gerin and being on kibbutz, you were still not Israeli.
It's true. That's very true.
And we still make fun of your accent to this day.
We make fun of yours too. It's perfectly okay. So, firstly, it wasn't even just an accent. I really didn't speak Hebrew very well. 90% of what I did was monkey see, monkey do, right? I had done a kosher krivi, a training course to get into the army, combat fitness course, that the guy who ran it is a beast, and he has created a generation of warriors that I cannot even begin to describe. I was a fighter in Sayeret Tzanchanim, in Force Recon for the paratroopers, and I was the failure of my group of guys that went through that training course, just so you understand what the standard is. They worked us really hard, but when we got to the tryouts, the selections, we ate it was like it was nothing, but they also made sure we knew the words for the tryouts. So getting to selection for paratroopers, I knew the words for push-ups, I knew the words for crawling, I knew the words for sprinting. When I got to the tryout for the special units in paratroopers, the same, and I could come in first, second, third place in sprints and crawling. I didn't care that I was tired, that I was hungry, that it hurt. That didn't matter. I knew what I was expecting. But then actually getting into the unit, the physical stuff wasn't the hard part. I didn't understand half of what was going on. So 1, there was the monkey see, monkey do. 2, there were the people that really helped us along the way. And 3 was my first officer, who, if I can say nothing else about him, he definitely helped with my Hebrew, because he made a rule that no one was allowed to translate things to English for me, and I was never allowed to ask in English, and if we messed up, we would crawl over rocks. It hurt. Yeah. We learned very quickly not to do that.
Right, so that's how I learned Hebrew, but I learned it in the civilian market, working on palm trees on a kibbutz beforehand, where the rule was if I spoke in English, you pushed me out of the tree.
Yep.
So I started on the small trees, and by the time we got to the tall trees, thank God I knew Hebrew, because that would have been a big, long fall.
That would be a problem.
That would have been a problem.
So then back to your question. 1, it was going through that hardship together as a team. And one of the great things about the unit that we're in, the type of unit that I served in, is we serve in organic teams from the day we're selected until the day we finish reserves, or whatever comes first, unfortunately, because that's also built into what this means, what it means to be a warrior, that you take into consideration that you know those friends that are onto your left and right, you might be at their funeral one day. It's just a reality of being a warrior. So obviously, 3 months basic training where they take you from being a civilian to a soldier, a lot of push-ups, a lot of running around, a lot of crawling, a lot of screaming, a lot of shooting, a lot of learning very basic tactics.
It's the very basics. It's the foundations.
It's the very, very basics. Then after that, another 4 months of advanced training where they take you from being a soldier to an infantry soldier. And that is more the advanced tactics. It's a little bit more in depth. And even there, I didn't entirely understand all of the Hebrew, but I understood well enough what was going on. For us, once we finished that point, well, all of the regular infantry and paratroopers then goes off to their unit and start training in the unit. We have another 8 months of qualifications that include the counter-terror course, that include the intelligence and reconnaissance course, that include a lot of urban warfare, navigation, small unit tactics, all of the things we would need to be the recon unit for the paratroopers brigade. The joke that my friends always make is you were crazy enough to volunteer for paratroopers so you'd have to jump out of a plane, and then crazy enough to be in the group of guys that go in 3 days before. Not only do you not jump out of the plane, you're waiting for them when they've jumped out.
Listen, no one ever claimed you were smart, Chaim.
That is true. I mean, my wife likes to say it, but I think she's just being nice.
She did marry you.
That's true. I mean, you brought her to me, so I'm going to blame you for that one.
Okay. So you've done training. You finished your training. What year did you finish training in?
So we drafted in November of 2013, and we finished our training
right in time for Tzukeitan, no?
No, we were in Tzukeitan between advanced training and the Special Forces School.
So let's go to that, because I remember there was a story there.
There is a story.
There's a story there that you were for Tzukeitan. What was Tzukeitan in English? Defensive
Tzukeitan
Edge?
is Protective Edge. It was the war in 2014 that happened after they kidnapped 3 kids in Gush Etzion. Eventually found their bodies, and then after the operation to find the bodies, bring back our boys, they started shooting rockets nonstop into Israel.
Again, and we went into Gaza for one of the million of times before this current war that we went into Gaza.
Exactly.
And it caught you guys in between advanced training and the completion of your qualifications, and you guys were sent into Gaza, if I remember correctly.
We were sent into Gaza. We were not with the actual unit. We were one step back. We were under command of, I think, a tank brigade, and ultimately kind of holding the back line, making sure no one surprised us from behind, making sure no tunnels popped up that could then just go and cross right into Israel.
Right, and then you go from now that you were, which is it's weird to be in training and then to be in battle, and then to go back to training. It's like you're all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I just did what I'm supposed to do. What do I have to keep training for? So
the joke we make now is after every round of reserves, we have 3 days of unpacking where we sit with a psychologist, a social worker, a health and wellness officer of the Army, and talk about what we experienced. My first experience of war was coming back, and less than a week later, I was crawling up and down, getting yelled at because I wasn't crawling fast enough. The dichotomy was amazing. The humor was not lost on us, but at the end of the day, you understand very quickly, and it's something we learned throughout the training, that there's what we were doing as just infantry soldiers, kind of helping out with tanks and other things, and actually being a recon paratrooper and everything that came along with that, with being the guys that are leading the way, being the guys that are the first ones in. Well, there's also the message you have to remember that even now, like we joke, but we had a training exercise before reserve duty again, where we've done 300 plus days of war, and then we're going back to a shooting range to the basics. And that part of being a warrior is you're always training and retraining, and it's you're getting the instincts back to be. You can never train enough. Well, the idea that you're going to rise to the occasion is ridiculous. You're only ever going to fall to your training, and muscle memory is a huge part of that. Exactly. And one of the things that you really have to learn as a combat soldier, even once you've been through a special operations unit, then through years of reserves, through a war, and you think, oh, I'm a big man, but you need to still have that humility of when my officer says, hey, you did this, this, and this wrong when you were shooting, and that's why your groupings weren't tight enough, you shut your mouth, you listen, and you fix it. Because if you don't do that, it's not just my life, it's my friends. It's that bullet that I missed that isn't going to hit the person shooting at me, that he's then going to get the guy on my shoulder, and I'm not ready for that to happen. Exactly. So you finish training, which is an integral part of who we are, right? It's that muscle memory, it's instinct, it's getting the basics. It's all about discipline, which is a huge lesson for life. You finish training, you're now serving in the Force Recon Unit, you've moved on. What are some of the lessons you can share with us of what it means when you're operating at that level? What are the lessons you can share with listeners, with me, with whoever is around us listening, that really affected who you are and made you what you are? Like, where is it that you're training, or there was something that you did in your training that you can see that this is a clear one-to-one example of how it affected reality? Or, your personality and being it that makes you different than the people around you in a situation? So one, the willingness to suffer for a better cause. Because at the end of the day, when you're going through the recon school, our combat instructors more or less torture you. You're crawling, you're sprinting. During our first week of advanced shooting, we were in 50-degree weather wearing ceramic plates with vests over it because the Army didn't yet have
I remember
the
those
vested
days.
plate carriers. And every time one of us spoke out of turn or did even one thing wrong, we would be doing sprints 50 meters back and forth in 50-degree weather, carrying each other one-on-one. And they don't care how big each of you are. You're carrying the guy next to you. If he's going to be 50 kilos, great, you're going to have an easy time. If it was the friend I was carrying who was 85 kilos and I was 70 at the time, well, that's what it's going to be. And I kind of always had a little bit of, at the beginning, you don't understand what the point of it is. But then later, when you get into real war, it's, oh, even if I am sitting down right now and all of a sudden someone starts shooting, my heart rate's at 1,000. I'm going to be as though I've just ran a marathon. I need to be able to do this perfectly under the highest stress situations. When things start going boom around you, it doesn't matter how hardened you are. That first boom is going to make you go, okay, what's going on? So that high stress, working under stress, that making us do the crawls and the sprints and the push-ups and having our muscles be tired and hurt before then doing an hour of Krav Maga where we were just going full force at each other, gave us the ability that, all right, so it hurts a little bit, but you need to be able to do it anyway because your life is still going to depend on it when you're uncomfortable, when you're tired, when you're sweaty, when your muscles hurt.
Right. So I wanna share a story actually now. So we're talking a little bit about Aza and war. There was so if everyone hasn't figured out yet, Chaim serves on the Force Recon team that serves in our battalion. I serve as the battalion commander, so I get to move around a lot and see all the different guys on all different teams. And I like to think I have my own little mafia of former lone soldiers, Americans.
The godfather of the English speakers, as we call him.
A nickname I've only now found out about. And I remember one day in Gaza, at the very beginning of the war, I don't remember where we were. We walk into a building, I hear Chaim's team is in the building. So I go to find Chaim. And I see Chaim sitting by the front of the building, the entrance to the building, not the side we came in, the other side. I go to say hi to him, and he's sitting there on guard duty at the entrance. His light machine gun is on his back, and his pistol's out. And I'm looking at him and like, Chaim, why? Why? And he's like, oh, 2 days ago my machine gun broke.
It was the same day. I got a
It was
new
the
one.
same
It
day?
was the same. I got a new one the
It
next
was the
day.
same day. Again, the details are a little bit
Yeah,
fuzzy.
there
but
was a lot going on.
there's a lot going on. His machine gun broke, so instead of clearing houses with his machine gun, he's walking around Gaza with his pistol as his solution.
At one time, one of the worst places to possibly be
Yeah, it
in
was-
Gaza, and it was entertaining because one of the facts of
It
being
was-
a light machine gunner is I'm the point man for my team, meaning I'm the first guy on every door. Now, you obviously can't do that with a pistol, but if you thought I was going to walk around with nothing that was able to go boom in my hand, that's out of your mind.
It was, let's just say I remember seeing it and saying, like, if it was any other soldier that is on the team doing that, I would question how good of an idea this is. But knowing it's Chaim, I think it's okay.
I mean, between my background in national security and private contracting, I think I was going to be okay.
I was going to be okay. I wasn't worried about it. But I want to talk for a minute now about, training drills into the concept of discipline, muscle memory, habit forming, all the things that make you good at what you do. But how can we take that and how does that affect you in your private life? Like, how does that affect your marriage? How does that affect your employment? What is it that makes you different, for better or for worse, from the other men around you? And how is it that you being a warrior is something that's differentiating between you and the people around you in your everyday life?
So one of the first things that's most important, especially in a unit like ours with organic teams, is teamwork and the ability to operate with the people that are around you. And at the end of the day, when you're stuck in a group with 30 other guys, whether you finish the whole 30, whether you finish 20, whether you're 10 years into melee and you're only 11 guys, they're all different types of people from all different sections of Israeli society. You're not necessarily going to be best friends with everybody. And you need to be able to understand that there's a difference between being friends with someone and being able to work with them. And in our case, working with them means trusting them with your life, which means that even when I've been in jobs where I didn't necessarily get along with everybody I worked with, I knew how to make that differentiation and not let that get in the way of our ultimate goal. On the side of family, one of the huge things about being a combat soldier in a unit of our nature is at the beginning, when you first start, they would always tell us, we don't think we're the best. We know we are. And it was a mindset we took with us. And once you get through training, once you have the experience, you've been through war, you've been reserves, you don't feel like you have to prove yourself because someone's going to question my masculinity. I'm going to laugh at you. You've been through the things I've been through. You have no idea what you're talking about. But that also plays into a lack of a need for ego. And where I see that in my marriage, in my friendships, is that things that might set someone else off, things that my wife, my friends misunderstand when I say or get offended or upset by, I can, instead of immediately reacting, take a deep breath, be like, oh, it's okay. And then have a conversation. Because I don't have an ego to inflate. I don't have an ego that I have to outdo someone, to overpower someone. Now, of course, that's not true across the board. I think that's specific to certain types of people in our units, because obviously there are people with huge egos by nature of the fact of what I said. We don't think we're the best, we know we are. But whether that ego translates into confidence and security, or whether that ego translates into ego in the sense of it being a problem and you have to like go head to head with people.
Overconfidence in the end of the day.
You learn to make that differentiation. And I think once you've been through not just combat training, but actual combat, things that might to other people seem like a big deal, to you aren't such an overwhelming experience. One of the things we used to speak about all the time is everything's scary until you get to it, right? Everything seems that, whether it's going to be that selection for the unit, whether it's going to be getting through war week at the end of advanced training, whether it's going to be getting through the final exams of the training course, which is 12 days in the field, operating as though you're in war, eating next to nothing, barely sleeping, walking 30-something kilometers a night with 50% of your body weight at least on your back. I did it with a heavy machine gun because for whatever reason they decided that, yeah, a 70-kilo American can definitely carry the heavy machine gun.
Why not?
So things that otherwise would have been very difficult and would have been very hard to face didn't feel that big. Just felt like, okay, I understand what I have to do. Yes, it's going to be difficult, but it's something I'm able to do as long as I plan it and as long as I depend on the people that I know I can trust. One of the things we always talk about in the unit inside the teams is a team is good, and you tend to see this, when in pitch black, in the dead of night, with no moon, if everyone's sitting down and one person stands up, before they've even gotten to their knee, you know who it is just by how they move. It's how I see my team in the Army, and I've worked to apply that to teams I've worked with in my professional life, and it's only gone to make teams stronger. And I think that's something that allows for better teamwork, better cohesion, better allows you to understand and work with people that aren't necessarily the people that you would choose to be with in your day-to-day life.
All right, so now we're going to go a step further. All right, I'm not going to pretend to be your mother-in-law, and press you to be having children, but one day you will have children. What do you think is the most important thing that we pass down to our own children so that we guarantee that our nation still has warriors like yourself to protect us in the future? What is the underlying message, the most important educational idea that we can pass on?
As a Jew, the whole world is out to get you. We can say it as nicely or in any other way you want. You have to be able to protect yourself, your family, and your people. Having been forced to be a warrior, because frankly, draft isn't optional. Yes, I chose to do 2 selections to go to unit, but you have to go to the Army. You choose to be a warrior because it'll give you the skills and the resilience to then do things that would seem much harder later on. And then when you do face challenges with your family, when you do start raising sons, daughters, you can give them an example of what a leader, what a man, not in the sense of man versus woman, but an adult who has responsibility and knows what his direction is, can be. And having that been not beaten into you, but force you to do that, force you to make that definition of yourself, force you to have that confidence. Because if you don't have that confidence, you're not going to make it through the training, and you're definitely not going to make it through the realities of being a combat soldier. That is something that you have to show by example. It's one of the things we've always appreciated about you, that you continue to do reserves as a combat soldier until your son is old enough to go to the Army, because he sees this is what a man in Israel must be. This is what a warrior in Israel must be. And this is what it means to be someone who can actually stand up for your country. Words are wonderful, but at the end of the day, it's actions that save your life. Being a warrior is being a man of action, and also not being afraid of both making mistakes and correcting them afterwards.
All right. Now, one second. There's one, before we share our positive and optimistic thought for moving forward, there's one story that we have to say something funny after a serious comment like that. We have to get a little humor in here.
Okay.
Was Was it in Beit Hanun?
It was in Jabal. It was the
It was-
same
it
day
was
that I
also
broke
in
my. It was
Jabal?
the same day I broke my machine
It was
gun.
the same day you broke your machine gun. We did double check our stories beforehand to make sure we both remember the same thing.
Yep.
So I thought it was earlier than that actually. So I got the timeline wrong again.
Same day.
But that's okay. I have the excuse of age to mask my lack of memory.
20 years of mixed martial arts and getting hit in the head is usually a good enough excuse for me.
So there's a story of one of the guys that got injured. Fairly humorous place. And
Can we explain what happened? Can I explain what happened?
you tell the story better because I got to the event later on. I wasn't there when it actually happened. I got there later on with the medical extraction team.
So this will play into how I see and what I see in the generations to come. But the story goes like this. We were going through an area. We had identified enemies and we were trying to shoot at them to take them out. And all of a sudden, a bullet comes out of nowhere, a place that bullets had no business coming from. And I'll not get into why that happened. And we hear someone screaming. And it turns out that the bullet had essentially penetrated the butt cheek of one of the soldiers in the younger team in our unit. Now, fortunately for us, we have incredible medics and an incredible doctor with us. And the older teams, one of the great things about the organic teams is we've kind of all raised each other through the army. And we have this very brotherly response. So the oldest team in the unit ran to get him. Their medic is an incredible medic. He works in the medical field outside of the army. Immediately got him on a stretcher, got him at least patched up enough to get evacuated. And they gave him combat candy, which is something that you give people to help them deal with the pain until they actually get out. And as he's sitting on the stretcher, they're running towards the helicopter to the evacuation point with him, and he sits up and goes, "Gibol ze gibol," which the meaning is a hero is a hero no matter what, which just objectively was, they all started laughing as they're running with him. I think they actually said it on the radio afterwards, because it was just a ridiculous situation that could only happen in that state. But I think this kind of gets us to our next point about the generation going forward.
Well, I was going to say from that same event, the only part that I remember is one of our other higher up officers screaming nonstop in a very humorous way that there's a bullet in the butt. In Hebrew, it sounds a little funnier,
Yeah,
but
there
it's
is.
So
So now-
bullet in the butt,
so
bullet
when
in the butt.
so
So
now we-
everyone knows that the injury, while it still needs to be taken care of, everyone's going to be fine, and we're all going to get a good laugh out of this later on.
Yeah, that.
That
There were at first it was very scary. The second we realized he was going to be okay, and the second we heard that sentence, like, all right, he's going to be
it's
good.
just a bullet in the butt.
And this champ is back with us serving. He was walking within, I want to say, a week or two after that, and he just wanted to get back.
So now, let's share. We have a custom on our show, is we ask all of our guests to provide an optimistic thought for the future, or something positive, because with all the negativity around us in the whole world and here at home, there's not enough optimism in the world. There's not enough positivity, and I think that in the end of the day, as long as we focus more on what's good and what we're doing right, we can accept criticism for the mistakes we made, but we really do need to, as a society, focus on what's good. So what is it that provides you with optimism? What is it that provides you with positivity on a daily basis?
On a daily basis,
Basis.
On a daily, weekly, in the framework of reserves in the army, but also I see it in a wider framework of the country as a whole. The next generation surprised us. Before this war started, we called them the generation of screens, the generation of TikTok. This is a
yes, I
generation.
We said that about your generation too, Chaim.
Yeah, but I think we proved ourselves over
You proved
time.
yourselves also.
At that point, we hadn't gotten there. But from what I've seen, especially from the youngest team in my unit, from other younger reservists, guys that came through the Lone Soldier Center, lone soldiers that even when I get out of the army, I was talking to them about what their tryouts were going to be like. Some of them who now serve with us in reserves have just proven to be exactly what we need. People who are ready to go the distance, to do what needs to be done. The story about a hero is a hero, gibol is a gibol, it's more than just that it's a funny situation. It's that these guys who were maybe 8 months out of their active duty and already back in a war, even after they got hurt, were just looking how to get back. I have an even clearer picture of that day from before he caught the bullet to his butt, of looking up at the building to the direction where the terrorists were, seeing that guy's team with one guy with his knees, I saw from his knees up, hanging out of a window trying to shoot down an alley. And when I asked later, it turned out there were 2 guys inside the house holding him in. Now, that gentleman had managed to survive the Nova party, and just watching them operate with no fear, just this is what needs to be done, because they understood what was behind it. that gives me strength. That gives me some optimism about moving forward because I know we have another generation that is willing to take the reins, that is willing to do what needs to be done, that wants to continue to be what we need from this country.
Well, I want to keep going. I want this episode to keep going on. Unfortunately for our viewers at home, we have to end here. Fortunately for me, I get to hang out with you on base in uniform with our commandant a lot and discuss all of these things to more length. And with that, I want to say thank you to Haim for joining us. I want to say thank you to our partners here at the Jerusalem Media Group and to our sponsors at BeThereIsrael.com. They provide streaming video services for all your events here in Israel. For all the people that can't be here in person, they can be part of your events from wherever they are in the world. And with that, thank you, and Am Yisrael Chai.